He promised it would happen during the campaign, and now it has. In 2016, Donald Trump ran on the promise to put America first on immigration, national security, and trade, among other issues. And this past week, he made the first high-profile move on trade of his presidency. President Trump announced that the United States would begin charging a new tariff on steel and aluminum imports into the United States. Steel will be tariffed at 25%, and aluminum will be tariffed at 10%. These measures are designed to protect the American steel and aluminum industries while keeping jobs in the U.S. and incentivizing companies with factories overseas to move those factories to the U.S. Naturally, yes, this means that companies will be paying slightly more for steel and aluminum because Chinese imports will become more expensive. Economic globalists and cosmopolitan economists took to the airwaves over the weekend to express their disdain for the notion that America would pursue an economic policy that protects American industry, just like every other country in the world. In today's video, we'll take a look at the history of American tariff policy. There's a lot of misinformation out there. We'll look at what tariffs actually do to the economy and how they'll benefit American industry and the nation as a whole. And we'll respond to some of the criticisms levied by our good friends in Conservative Inc.
Welcome back, my legion. Today, we'll be specifically talking about why no true patriot would ever support tariffs. Let's get straight into it, shall we?
All right, so first of all, what is a tariff? A tariff is similar to a tax. It's charged, usually as a percentage, on specific classes of imports into a country. For example, if there were to be a 25% tax on shoes being imported from China, and I imported $1,000 worth of shoes, then I, as the importer, would also have to pay $250 to the US government. Let's say there's an American shoe company we'll call USA Shoes, and there's a Chinese company called China Shoes. USA Shoes are made in America by American workers that are paid a fair wage and contribute to the American economy. China Shoes are made in China by sweatshop workers, and their wages are reinvested into the Chinese economy. Because China Shoes uses sweatshop labor and doesn't pay their employees fairly, they can produce shoes for less than USA Shoes. As a result, if they flood the market with China Shoes, they can undercut USA Shoes to the point where USA Shoes will go out of business, taking those thousands of American jobs with them. If the American government puts a 25% tariff on the importation of Chinese shoes, it raises their price to be comparable with those of American shoes, thus financially disincentivizing the purchase of Chinese shoes and creating a situation where more consumers are more likely to buy USA shoes.
There are multiple things wrong with what you just said, and now I'm going to explain why. And you might want to pay attention, James, because economics is essentially math applied to scarce resources. So you can't just argue that just because my economics is right doesn't mean that I'm right. You can't argue that because that's not how reality works. So, first off, the idea that China will always outcompete us because they can have cheaper labor than anybody else. That's just simply not true. Cheaper labor will always mean cheaper products and quality. There's always a price when you have something become cheaper, no matter what. And the thing is, overall price for a product actually doesn't matter. What matters is what the customer perceives they're going to be getting. Case in point. When you go to McDonald's, you'll start to notice that a lot of McDonald's employees have been replaced by kiosks. Why? Because the niche that McDonald's fills is the food niche for convenience. McDonald's is a place you go for a cheap burger and to get the hell out. But let's say you went to, I don't know, Applebee's. I personally don't like them, but other people do. When you go out to there, even if you could lower the costs, in time, customers would get their food by simply replacing all of them with kiosks. You would never do that in a place like Applebee's. Why? Because the cute waitress who's going to be serving you tonight is a part of the experience, the atmosphere. It's a place you take your girlfriend out. Although I would go to a much better restaurant than Applebee's. Nevertheless, you go out there for the experience, and you want someone to wait on you. And guess what? It all costs a hell of a lot more than if you went to McDonald's. You will pay more because you believe you're getting a superior product. This is why Gucci bags in reality are only worth about $50 after manufacturing costs, even for profits. But women will pay upwards of $200 to get their hands on one of these precious Italian leather products. They're not worth more in reality, but to women, they are worth more because they are a symbol of social status. And that should be enough to tell you that people will pay more for higher quality products in the US. The problem isn't whether or not China is able to have cheaper labor. You are ignoring the actual root of the problem because it doesn't agree with your beliefs. And those beliefs are, no matter what Trump does, he is never wrong, and you must always support him, or you are an anti-nationalist, open borders globalist.
That same scenario is effectively what's going on right now with Chinese steel, Chinese electronics, and just about every other manufactured good. They're made for cheaper in China than Americans can make them for here in America, and as a result, when they're dumped onto the American market, they sell for less and put American manufacturers out of business, taking American jobs with them. Now, that's the overview on why a tariff is implemented and what it is. Let's look specifically at the history now of American tariff policy.
So let's finish the video by addressing what James is talking about. He wants to save American jobs, and he wants to do so by making sure that Chinese steel and aluminum is more expensive than if we didn't tariff it. This way, it's just as expensive as US steel. Well, here's the problem with that. If you think this will save American jobs, you are sadly mistaken. You see, when copper became too expensive, we decided to switch because we needed copper for the internet, but it became too expensive to use. So what did we do? We went to the desert and collected sand and turned it into fiber optic cables. I'm not even kidding. When the rate of diminishing return makes a certain commodity just too expensive to use and just worthless, well, we usually switch to a different one. And so there might be some industrious entrepreneur that says, screw both aluminum and steel. Look what I got. Insert metal alloy here. Once that happens, those workers will be out of business. And the problem with tariffs is that you are accelerating the process at which that will happen. Because all you want to do, James, is sit around and say, America, America, math no longer applies. And unfortunately, that doesn't change how reality works. Math is math, and economics is just math applied to how to distribute scarce resources. So you will not actually be saving any jobs. And even worse, the real reason why China is kicking our ass is because American taxes are so high, there's no point in manufacturing in the United States. If you really want to save American jobs, and I don't even know if you really do, you don't seem like the type, then you should be trying to get the taxes in the United States lowered. Because as it stands, there is no reason to manufacture anything in the United States. We literally have an easier time shipping already pre-made parts over to a foreign nation just to be assembled by people who commit suicide out of buildings and then be transported back. It's less expensive to do that than to manufacture in the United States. That should tell you something about the tax system. But, ladies and gentlemen, it is late at night and I need to get some sleep. And even this late at night, tariffs will never work. They don't work long term. They're a band-aid solution, and they eventually fail. My name is Arsian, and I am the Angel of Objectivism. Signing off.